Well, welcome YouTube friends and family to today's edition of the Wellness Homesteader. Please excuse the cranking noise in the background. It is my ceiling fan, as well as my AC just cut on. It always does that as soon as I turn on the camera. I really had no intention of doing a video, but then I thought, you know what? I'm not an expert on it, but maybe I can encourage you that even if you've never done something, it is worth a try. So over to here on my stove, I have my new steam juicer, stainless steel, 11.5 quarts. And once I get better organized, I will show you the box because no way can I say the brand name. I did purchase it online from Lehman's. Excellent, excellent customer service, guys. So if you're having trouble with Amazon, I was. As far as even getting a ship date, Lehman's is the way to go. So what am I gonna do? Guys, I want my refrigerators back. I have so many apples. Every crisper bin, every shelf in my little fridge is filled. So what I'm doing over here is I'm getting the water hot. I've washed my jars. I have my water bath canner just on warm. I've washed all my jars. I've done all the things that you do to can. And I'm going to show you how you can steam apples in a steam juicer and make apple juice, which you can turn into apple cider or lovely apple drinks. Stay tuned. So let me show you a little bit about the steamer. And I'm probably gonna butcher this name. It's the Maja steamer. No, it is not a US made item. It is stainless steel. So you can buy aluminum ones, but I decided that I'm not a fan of cooking in aluminum. There are many medical researchers who believe there is a link between cooking in aluminum and Alzheimer's disease, and I'm forgetful enough as it is. So that's why I chose the stainless. So it has a glass lid. The first chamber here, let's see if I can bring you closer. I'm gonna do a quick peek for you. I have full of apples. So you don't have to peel them, you don't have to core them. I simply quartered them. In this middle section, you'll notice, has this little rubber tubing attached to it. So there's water in the bottom. As it boils, it creates steam in this chamber. The steam goes up through a hole in that chamber into the apples. The apples release their juice into the chamber, and then you can drain it off into jars for canning. So pretty nifty little setup without as much cutting, slicing, etc. So just in full disclosure, this was $19.99. I have to tell you, I had the best customer service ever from Lehman's that I have ever had. So I didn't get a shipping notification, didn't, and I'm like, I need my refrigerators back. So I called them, and they were so lovely. I talked with a girl named Lisa, and I just explained my situation, and she said, well, I can upgrade your shipping for $3 and then it will be priority. And I'm like, wow, wish I'd have thought of that. And that was yesterday, I think. It came today, guys. It came today. So I was super excited about that. They got it right out. And they're in Kidron, Ohio, which is about 175 miles east of me. I had even thought of driving there. I would love to go to Lehman's, but not a 6-hour round trip to pick up a steam juicer. So I'm super excited to have this. I think this is going to be great for all kinds of juicing. And I've shared with you many times, I'm a horrible fruit eater. As far as just to like buy fresh fruit and eat it, I'm not good at that. Now, if we're talking pie, I'm your girl. So let me share with you some of the things I've been doing with apples this season. Stay tuned. So besides making apple juice, I think I did a video on dehydrating apples. So I have several jars now of the dehydrated apples, which are great in granola bars, oatmeal. I bet it would even be good in baked oatmeal if you rehydrated them a bit. I wanted just frozen apples. I'm trying to spread out my pantry between shelf stable, dehydrated shelf stable, and freezer, so I don't have all of my eggs in the proverbial one basket. So what I did here is I used my Johnny Appleseed peeler, cored them, spread them out in a single layer dipped them in lemon juice water, spread them out on a single layer, put freezer paper in between each layer, froze them solid, vacuum sealed them. So I have many bags of apples done in this way so I can thaw them, use them for apple pie, apple crisp, whatever I would like. I have leftover still applesauce from last year, caramel apple pie jam from last year. Not my bag, but everybody that I gift it to loves it. And then I got totally carried away, guys, and I made enough apple butter for the universe, like a whole humongous roaster full. So I'm pretty good on those things, but I don't have any juice. And I thought I would love to have apple juice, shelf staple, not only for nutrition, but also to make different drinks like spiced hot apple cider. So that is why I'm juicing today. So I'm going to let the juice build up, and then I'll show you how we extract the juice and get it into the jars. Stay tuned. Our apples have been steaming for just over an hour, and we are starting to get juiced. You can see I have 3 pints sitting over here. I'm looking for my hot mitt, which I seem to have misplaced. Here we go. So I will share with you guys, this is screaming hot. So I just took a hot jar out of the canner. You simply squeeze the clip and the juice will flow right into the jar. Of course, you need to keep the jar lower than the canner. And I'm only gonna have a partial jar on that one, which is fine. So we're going to mash down the apples, add a few more, and keep extracting juice. Stay tuned. Well, the apron is off and the kitchen is officially closed for the night, but stay tuned because I'm going to continue this video tomorrow. So I have left my setup on the stove with the stove off, obviously, of all of my apples that I juiced, because I am going to process what is left of the apple pulp through one of those manual strainers, because that's all I happen to have, or grinder things. And also I have about 20 apples left. I processed about 40, and I ended up with a beautiful batch of juice. I'm going to show you in a minute. So my water bath canner over here, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this water. It has a little bit of vinegar in it, so I'm just going to unplug it here. I'm going to leave it sit for the night, and I have left my canning station set up. I don't like going to bed with my kitchen a mess. However, sometimes you have to do that when you're going to get up, and I'm not going to put it all away and drag it back out again in the morning. So hold tight a minute. I'm going to swing you around, and I want to show you our beautiful juice. So we ended up with 5 complete pints of juice. I just stopped it there because any remaining juice will be good to use in the applesauce. 4 of the 5 have sealed. This one has not. If it does not seal, I have the option of reprocessing it tomorrow with the applesauce, or I can just drink it. You may notice that the apple juice is not perfectly clear, and there is some sediment in the bottom. So you kind of have a choice when you're using the steam juicer of letting that apple juice sit and siphoning off just the clear juice. I personally don't mind the pulp and think that's part of the health benefit that you do get from apples, so I decided to leave it. So we're just going to leave this overnight. Please excuse the endless mess, but you know, harvest time, that's what happens. So I'm gonna go relax, watch a movie, have a little dinner, and I'll see y'all bright and early. Well, good morning again. It is 5:23. Please excuse the way I look. Having some coffee in my very cute Frankie cup. And I'm back at Apples this morning, so let me swing you down here a little bit. So this is all I have left. I am taking back charge of my refrigerators, and these are some gorgeous apples, guys. Primarily, but not totally, Cortland's, which to me are a very good saucing apple. They are pretty tart. These are local apples from Piper Orchard, so I'm sure they will be absolutely delicious. I have frozen a lot of them. I dehydrated some, but we will be using some sugar today to make our applesauce. So I will share with you. Ooh, I got up to such a mess in the kitchen. I'm like, I want my kitchen back. My fridge is back. Now I want my kitchen back. All of my 5 pints of apple juice did seal. So I actually woke up at midnight and got up to check and see, and I'm like, yes, it sealed. Because if it hadn't, I was going to stick it in the fridge. Overnight, I left all of the pulp, which I am going to attempt to, and I could not think of what this thing was called. Hello, food mill. I'm going to attempt to run it through the food mill, but I'm also going to cook and process these apples into sauce. We'll see how difficult it is to get it through this food mill. On a normal time, my neighbor has an excellent food mill, and normally I borrow that. However, as I shared yesterday, she's actually ill, and I'm not going to disturb her, so we'll try plan B. And if it doesn't work, or I decide it's too much trouble, I still have all of these beautiful apples to make into sauce. I hate wasting food, so I will probably persevere with the food mill. So part of me, I'm still in my pajamas. I have not had a shower. So I have washed up my jars. I've got my apples just hanging out in some chilly water. I'm gonna head upstairs, get cleaned up for the day, and I'll be back shortly and we'll make some applesauce. Nothing like a good hot shower to get your day started and get ready to do lots of work. So what I am going to start doing here, if you've never made applesauce before, is I'm using my Johnny Appleseed peeler. I've used it in many videos, and I'm just peeling and coring the apples, and I am going to chunk these. So even though they're sliced, I'm going to cut them in about 1/4, and I'm going to put them directly into a pot. Now, if you're concerned about the discoloration, wow, these are huge apples, you certainly can soak them in lemon water first. I'm not going to do that, guys, because this will go so quickly that I don't mind a little color in my applesauce, and by the time I spice it up, there will be plenty of color. You can save your cores, peels, and the little ends with the peel on it. You can make apple scrap vinegar, which I forgot to share yesterday. That's one of the things that I have certainly made this year. But I just have so much, it doesn't make sense for me to spend the time to make more vinegar. I just really, I don't need it. So at least at this point, I'm going to concentrate on getting applesauce in the jars. And what I'm doing here is I'm just taking off pieces of peel. These apples are pretty soft. Cortland's have a softer texture. That's partly how they cook up. Now, a couple of them do have, these are not organic, I will say that, but the orchard, Piper Orchard, uses a minimum of chemicals that they can. Some of their produce is organic, some is not. The apples are not. So any places like this, I'll simply skim out. Just always remember when you're prepping food, the quality is not, of what you put in the jar is not going to improve during the canning process. So I'm going to keep slicing, and I tell you, I think whoever invented this apple peeler is like my entire best friend in the world, because it just saves so much issue on my hands. It makes it super quick, and I just love having the apple peeler. So this is a huge apple. Yeah. So sometimes there are apples that would be too big. So in that case, I'm gonna probably just have to hand peel this, but you know what? One every once in a while is not a huge deal. So I'm gonna keep peeling. Once I get them all in the pot, I will bring you back and show you next steps. Well, we have a huge pot of apples here, It's 6:23, so it took me a little bit of time to get those all cored and peeled. I'm just putting in, maybe that was about a cup of water, just so the apples don't scorch on the bottom. And I'm going to be canning today in 3/4 pints and processing them as pints for the pint time. This is just the standard jar that I've used for applesauce for years. It's a perfect size for me, and I've shared with my mom. However, I just wanted to share a little something with you that you may not know. So my mom always says my food is too spicy. And even when it's something that doesn't even have so much as black pepper in it. And I couldn't figure that out at first. And as my mom is aged, she's now 86, she totally likes sweet and salty. And there is a medical reason for that. So as we age, we lose our sense of sweet and salty taste. So it takes a higher concentration of sugar or salt for you to be able to taste it. So I want you to think about what is left. If you can't taste sweet and salty, what's left? Sour and bitter. So that's why many older people, older seniors, will have a very poor appetite, will complain about the taste of food being off, and will want to gravitate towards potato chips and Hershey bars like my mom. So I am going to suggest to her she might want to just sweeten the applesauce, because I don't want to use an inordinate amount of sugar, because I also want to have this to use and to eat. I've shared these are very tart apples, so I will wait until they cook down, until I make a decision about what I'm going to put in them, and I'll share that with you at the time. So again, this was 20 large apples. I'd say about a peck. I'm not very good at that kind of estimation, but it's going to take a while for these to cook down, and I can't lid them because, well, you know what? Maybe I can lid them. We'll sort of lid them and let them start to soften, and then I'll be able to mash them up, get them cooked, tasted, and add my spices and sugar. So stay tuned. Okay, quick update. I tried to put the pulp from the steamed apples from last night through the food mill, quickly realized it was far too firm. So that tells me I should have cooked much longer and probably could have extracted a lot more juice. But again, I'm still happy with what I got. And I'm determined not to waste these apples. So into my other roaster, I have placed all the pulp. I'm going to cook that down. I had maybe a cup of apple juice that I had drained out, and I put that in there to prevent it from scorching. I may need to add a little bit of water, and I'm going to cook both of these pots down. And this can simply be mashed. This will have to be run through the food mill. So a little bigger project than I anticipated, but we are going to have so much great, fresh tasting applesauce, so much better than store-bought. Nothing artificial, weird added to it, no preservatives, no chemicals. So to me, it is worth putting the effort in. So I'm gonna let these cook down. I will bring you back in a little bit. Okay, y'all, it's 6:53, so we're at about 30 minutes on cook down. I've been running my raw apples on about medium to medium-high heat. And as you can see, they are really starting to break down, but we have a long way to go yet. So I'm just, even though they've cooked way down, I'm just going to let them continue. I'm going to stir them frequently, make sure they don't get too dry. And then here is our apples from yesterday that we juiced. Guys, I have to tell you, with the seeds and the cores and everything in here, the peels, this smells amazing. Now, these are much more broken down than the other batch, but I have a sneaking suspicion that I'm going to like this applesauce better. So, as I can up here, oh, I'm not even sure when. I am going to try to put maybe different bands on the top of the jars. I do have some gold bands from, I think, Dollar General version of canning lids, or canning rings, I should say. so that I can tell which one actually comes out better. If I had a Squeezo or one of those type of pulp separators, this would be a much easier job. I don't have that, but I just couldn't see wasting, and there's probably more of this because this is about 40 apples cooked down. They were very small. This is 20 large apples. So let's see what we get. It's 5 till 7 now, and I feel like I'm in a race, but I actually call my mom at 7 every morning and usually talk to her for an hour. I'm gonna try to cut it short this morning, but I just make sure she's up, ready for the caregiver. Got her coffee, because we women need our coffee. I've heated mine up 3 times. I'm gonna heat it up one more time. Sit in my chair, relax a minute, keep an eye on this, and then I will bring you back when we are at a cooked down point. Stay tuned. Well, it is 25 after 7, and whew, that's warm. Let me pull the lid and show you where we are on our peeled and cored apples. So we are at a great texture now. The apples are super soft, cooked up, and you'd have a couple options here. You could stick blend this if you want your applesauce smooth. I like it chunky. I'll probably hit it a couple times with the potato masher. I was trying to determine how many cups this might be. This is a 5.5 quart stock pot, which would be 22 cups, but we've cooked way down, so I don't have near that much. So I'm going to use my typical method. I'm just going to taste as I season. And I also want to show you, and that's hot too, in my oval oven where we are. So it's a much darker applesauce because the peels are in it. We are getting nice and soft, but honestly, I added some raw apple towards the end of the steam that really needed to cook down. So I'm going to continue to cook this and work on processing this first, because this needs to be really soft so it doesn't jam up in the food mill like it was earlier. So I might hit that with a potato masher too. And what am I going to put in my applesauce? Well, I'm going to do an interesting combo, guys. And I will show you. So in this jar is sucanat, and sucanat is pure cane sugar juice that's been evaporated into granules, so the molasses is not removed, so it's going to have that brown sugary taste, as well as some homemade dark brown sugar and some organic ground cinnamon. So I'm going to get started here. Let me get the lid back on this one. Tasting this, seasoning it, getting it to the right sweetness. I don't like it super sweet. And again, this was 20 very large apples, about a peck. I'll let you know what I add. Once I add it, I'm gonna jar it up. I'm gonna go ahead and flip my canner to medium, get those jars warmed up, and get started on canning our first batch of applesauce. Well, our first batch of applesauce is in the canner, and I'm super excited. So I ended up with 9 3/4 pints, which is roughly 7 pints, a little bit less, but I did have, whoa, forgot the water was running. I did have about this much left over, which will go into the next batch. So I have been cooking down the apples that we steamed yesterday, mashing them frequently. When I tried to run it through the food mill, the hard apples, if you will, would not push through. So it kept balling up, and I was like, this is gonna take all day, not gonna do that. So also recipe, so for roughly 7 pints, I ended up using 1 cup of sucanat and half a cup of brown sugar with maybe 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. I like it cinnamony. So I am going to let this process. I have checked 3 references. That's kind of just how I do it. And I've shared this book before, the Amish Canning Cookbook. If you're, check your altitude. If you're doing a pint, it's 15 minutes if you're at 1,000 feet or below. So I'm gonna let this rock and roll for 15 minutes, rest for 5. we'll bring them out to cool and move on to the next batch of applesauce. And I'm going to try something different for the second batch. I'm going to try sweetening with maple syrup and not using any cane sugar in it, and putting, of course, the cinnamon and maybe a little bit of vanilla, just to try something different. If I can't get it sweet enough without using tons and tons of maple syrup, then I will put some, I think, brown sugar in it. So stay tuned for the second batch. Well, as I'm waiting for the canner to come to temp so I can start timing, I thought I would start working on our apples that I used yesterday for steaming. And I want to share with you, I have almost 8 cups here, and I have maybe 4 here. And out of that, here is the waste. So very little. And let me share, it's much easier to operate this food mill when you turn it in the right direction. I have a tendency to turn things like left-handed instead of right-handed. So yeah, that was my error yesterday. However, I will say cooking these apples down was definitely still needed. So I probably don't even have, well, certainly no more than a cup of waste from about 12 cups of apples. And let me just show you here really quickly how simple it is to operate this mill when you do it the right way. So the food mill has the little hooks for your bowl, and I'm just going to scoop a couple generous scoops in, and you turn it righty-tighty and it sends the apples through this fine mesh type sieve. As the peels get smashed against the holes, you go counterclockwise, which clears the bottom of the sieve. So very, very simple, and honestly, my canner's not even up to temp yet, so that's how quickly I have processed these apples. Now this will produce a much, much more smoother applesauce. And when you get tired, switch arms. But when I switch arms, I want to go the other way. But we are probably going to end up with about 16 cups. Now, I did have a little stickage at the bottom, not really scorched, just a little stickage. So I may not want to scrape the pan quite as well right at the bottom. And then I'm going to take this mixture back over to the stove, put it on a low heat, and start adding maple syrup, vanilla, and cinnamon, and tasting till we get just the right combination. So I'll bring you back then. All of our applesauce has been milled, and look at this gorgeous, gorgeous color. So it won't be hard to tell the jars apart. I have used all but one of my 3/4 pints, so this is gonna need to be canned in pints. I measured out, I had a little greater than 8 pints. It may go up a little bit depending on how much liquid I need to add in the form of maple syrup. Pardon me. So the first thing I'm going to do, of course, is add a generous couple teaspoons of cinnamon. And I do have this on a medium-ish heat because in the process of preparing this, it has cooled dramatically, and because this will be going into hot jars into a warm canner, we do need to get it heated up. So I'm going to start there. Then I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And I realize this is a dry measure cup, it's close enough. I'm gonna add about a 1/4 cup of maple syrup to start with. So let me tell you, I was extremely surprised. This applesauce is way sweeter naturally than what the other applesauce is. And I think the reason is this is a multitude of different apples. It's not all Cortlands as the first batch was, and Cortlands are naturally much more tart. And I have like a bazillion tasting spoons. So I'm gonna start tasting here. Definitely need some more maple syrup. So let me get this open here. This is also from Piper's, and it is pure maple syrup. So let's see, I added about half a cup, so we're up to about 3/4 cup. I just want the really pure taste of the apple to shine through, but I also don't want it so sour that it's unpleasant to eat. This is some beautiful applesauce. All right, tasting spoon number 2. Almost. So let's do about another half cup, and I think that will be spot on. It definitely needs cinnamon. Wow, messy, messy. So you may be thinking, oh my word, you're gonna have a lot of applesauce to eat. Well, yes and no. Not only will I share some with my mother, so I won't be eating it all. My son, if he wants, I doubt he will. He's about as good of a fruit eater as I am. And try it. I think I'm gonna put a little brown sugar in there. The maple syrup is only mildly sweet, so let me just grab some brown sugar. That was about half a cup. And I think what I'm gonna do is add a little cinnamon. I'm gonna let it warm through, hang out a little bit, give that sugar a chance to really dissolve before I do anything further to it. But it's really, really good. Where's my cinnamon? Here we go. The other thing, sorry, I get sidetracked. I was going to say that is good to do with the applesauce. You can use it in place of oil in recipes, like baking recipes, brownies, etc. And that kind of came to light. There's a big chunk in there. That's fine. Back in the fat-free days, you know. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna taste it because I can't help myself. Now I'm out of tasting spoons, so I'm gonna have to wash. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna let this heat up. We have just over a minute left before I'm gonna turn off my canner, pull the lid, let the jars cool down for 5 minutes, and then we'll pull them out of the canner. Well, the apron is off. And our big apple canning project is finished. And guys, I have to tell you, I am so absolutely delighted. It is 9:50. So I still have the remainder of the day to do whatever I want. I've been able to clean my entire kitchen, sweep and mop the floor. I have all of my cloths and dish towels, etc. in the washing machine, so I've made good progress. Hear those pings? I love that sound. So I want to kind of recap what I did and why. So back here on the back row, I have 5 pints of juice. So this was my first time using the steam juicer. I did learn a lot. It's not hard, it's time consuming, it's lengthy. I think next year when I do this, because I will definitely be doing this, I will start earlier in the day. I didn't start until late afternoon yesterday. Be a little bit more patient, letting the apples break down. And I will also tell you, I have 9 3/4 pints, well, really almost 10, of the applesauce where I peeled and cored the apples. So different set of apples. And I used sucanat, cinnamon, and a little bit of brown sugar. It's very lightly sweetened, and those were all Cortland apples. And this is what they look like, and it's all sealed. Now I'm not going to touch these ones in front. Let me pull you down. So I got 10 full pints, plus this was actually the second batch. So that was the apples that I had juiced, that I continued to cook down, ran through the food mill. Guys, I will never again peel, core apples to make applesauce. I will always steam them down, take the juice. They're both good, don't get me wrong. This has such a depth of flavor. So I guess a lot of the things that you might regard as waste making applesauce, cores, peels, I put stem seeds and all in it. Of course, they didn't go through the food mill. And I ended up with less than 2 cups of waste out of 40 apples of various varieties and sizes. The second batch may be a little better because I used a lot of different types of apples, but I want the more savory, if you will, applesauce to use in place of oil and baking. So you might be thinking, was all that worth it? Why didn't you just go to the store, go to Aldi, buy their Indian Summer Natural applesauce, or go to Aldi, and I'm not even sure, Nature's Nectar, buy some apple juice, which I have both of these in my long-term pantry. Well, let me just share with you a couple things. So first, let's talk about cost before I start talking about what's in products. So 5 pints of juice, if I bought Great Value brand apple juice at Walmart, would be $1.74. Did I spend more than $1.74 on that juice? Oh, I guarantee you I did. In sweat equity. That's okay. This juice tastes nothing like this kind of juice. Now, this says it only has water, apple juice concentrate, ascorbic acid, or vitamin C. So this has been concentrated down, rehydrated. We know nothing about the apples. We don't know what type of apples. While it has no sugar, it's been messed with. I would much rather have juice that I extracted from apples from a source that I know and love. All right, so let's talk about applesauce. So I got really 20 pints of applesauce, the equivalent of, and if I would buy the same thing, if I would buy Mott's cinnamon applesauce, it would be $20.46. So just rounding, let's say I would have spent $22 to go to the grocery store and buy this on the economic side. I spent more than that, guys, on the apples. I'll just be full disclosure, plus maple syrup. Nothing that comes out of a jar like this tastes anything like this. I'm worth it. This is absolutely delicious. And I wanted you to think about something else. Apples. So when you go to the grocery store, and let's say you live in the northern half of the US, where we don't grow things in the winter, but there's beautiful fresh apples. US apples. Where do you think they come from? Well, I can tell you, they've been in a warehouse for the last 6 months, whatever, because apples are only grown and harvested once a year. So you're not getting the freshest of apples. You may not be getting the same nutrition from the apples, the same taste. So buying fresh from the orchard, where I know they keep their herbicides, etc., to a bare minimum. I did not buy organic. I shared that up front. I would much rather have this, and the proof is in the taste. So this applesauce says apples, water, ascorbic acid. That's it. So while neither of these items that I just shared with you are bad choices, and let's face it, I couldn't do this every single day. It's a lot of work, and not everyone wants to can, but this is why I do it. It tastes so much better. I feel like the nutrition is so much better. And guys, let me tell you, I've talked about being in the season of winter, and that winter is here. Thank you, jars. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We don't know where there could be supply chain interruptions. I have never shared, but my home sits on a small piece of about 50 acres of what was a very historic, for the town that I live in, fruit farm. And so to this day, my backyard grows strawberries instead of grass because I've not treated and destroyed them. And I had 2 trees when I moved here that were in total disease state. I had a pear, which never bore a pear, and I had an apple, which was bearing apples, but had been let go so long and it was in such poor condition, I chose to remove it. So I have no fruit trees, none. The only tree that I'm aware of that is remaining on this acreage, because of course houses have been built, is one pear tree, which had terrible brown spot this year, and it's my neighbors, and they told me to take what I want, and they weren't good. So I think I might adventure into growing some fruit trees. Now I realize it'll be a long time before I get edible fruit, but looking ahead is part of what we need to do. So what can we do today? We can do a lot of canning. What can we do tomorrow? Well, maybe we can buy some saplings and start some fruit trees. Even if I don't benefit, maybe my next generation can benefit from my fruit trees if I keep them well cared for. So I hope you've enjoyed this apple extravaganza. Let me see if I can, I guess I don't have the light on, guys. Sorry about that. Oops. And the humidity is 60% in my house right now, as I'm sure you can tell by my hair. So I have one that isn't sealed. So, and it'll seal. It's kind of nested in the middle, so it's too much heat from the adjoining jars. And I've found that if I turn on my ceiling fan, because I put a lot of heat and humidity in the house, my ceiling rate is better. Go figure. So if you haven't already and you enjoyed the video, would you please go ahead and smash that like button? It really helps me out. It helps YouTube know, as well as me, that you're enjoying my content. Drop me a comment below. What do you think about the difference in taste between pure only applesauce and using and food milling up all the cores, peels, etc.? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. I can tell you what mine is. So I haven't even had breakfast yet. I heated my coffee like 4 times, never drank it. So I am gonna go relax a little bit. My floor's mopped, wait on my laundry, and then see what I can get into this afternoon. So as always, be healthy, be well, be blessed, and I will see you all next week. Take care.